Secrets World. I've got a surprise for you, SS. It was me, the chief, disguised as Yellow Pinky all the time.
I knew it all the time, Chief. You see, I was disguised as you. What do you think you're doing, Morocco?
I just want to make sure I am me.
Woo, welcome. You have now entered Mad Warfare, mutually assured distraction, where we explore the weird, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious ways war is fought today, and how we can all protect our minds before we go too mad to find them.
Oh my!
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
How can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
Reminder, the opinions on this show are ours alone, and honestly, we might regret some of them later. They don't reflect our employers, past, present, or imaginary. This is a playground of wild ideas, so please, don't take anything here too seriously, unless it's genius. Then it was definitely intentional.
So, question for the audience. Do you ever feel like all this information is just bombarding your brain and it just might break it? Well, if only there were tools to help you make sense of the madness and make better decisions. Well, spoiler alert, there are. And guess what? Drum roll, please, kids. Today we have the guest to prove it. He is an intelligence analysis trainer, instructor, and self-proclaimed full-time nerd, so we relate to that, who spent decades teaching Intel pros how to make smarter decisions, and now is here to help the rest of us. Please welcome our very special mad guest, Jeremy Levin.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Pleasure to meet you.
As much as you can that you could do on your NipperNet backstory, if you will. We'd love to hear about how you ended up in intelligence.
Cast your mind back to the mid-1990s. We were dealing with a recession back then. I was out of work, trying to be a student. Oh, it sucked. It was horrible. And I felt there was nowhere for me to go. So I started looking at the military, which was well out of the realm of possibility that most of my friends ever thought I'd go into. But it's amazing what failure will do to you. So I spent months looking at what I wanted to do with the military and asking all my friends, hey, three things. What did you do in the military? What do you wish you'd done in the military? And then why? Right. And I spent, talking to everyone that I knew that had been in the service, and pretty much the consensus came back. If they had the chance, they would have gone in to be a translator, gone in to be a linguist. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's a language school in Monterey, California. It's the Defense Language Institute.
Monterey.
And it's an awesome facility. It was a year and a half of my time there, and I loved the whole thing. So, I went into the recruiter, and I was like, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to the language school, and you're going to send me there. And I ended up going to language school. For a year and a half, in 1994, 95, they taught me Arabic. So this was after the first Gulf War, before the War on Terror, in the mid-1990s, when no one gave a crap about the Middle East. The flavor of the week at the time was the Balkans. But I went in for Arabic and tried getting my butt to the Middle East. I volunteered for assignments out there. No, the Army in its infinite wisdom sent me to a Force 21 post where I was basically taking equipment to the field and trying to break it.
A Force 21 post?
It was at Fort Hood, and our mission was Force 21. It's getting the Force ready for the 21st century. So Force 21. So we were taking new equipment to the field and field testing it. We were trying to break it, trying to see where its limits were, which meant we did a lot of sitting around and watching contractors work on systems. And, technically I was supposed to be a collector. I was supposed to be a signals intelligence collector at the time. Didn't get the chance to do it. So flash forward a little bit, I ended up going to Bosnia because that's like the flavor of the week at the time, back in 1998. Mm-hmm. And instead of having me do a signals mission, no. And they put me on the liaison team to the Turkish J2 section, so the Turkish Security and Intelligence section. And So I spent my time in Bosnia running liaison between the American intel and the Turkish intel, which was brand spanking new for me. I had no idea what was going on. I had not been trained for this. But flash forward again, and I go to Kosovo. They're like, oh, I know your signals, and I know you're an Arabic translator, but what we really need is for you to work humans. So I went to Kosovo doing human intelligence. And so I was in the human analysis cell, which we weren't running operations. I wasn't running operations. What I was doing was working with the collectors, helping them find the right people to talk to, helping them with their approaches, working the back end of the sources. So source deconfliction, making sure that we weren't stepping on the toes of any of the other organizations out there. That was 1998. Oh, sorry. Kosovo was 2000. We hadn't heard of psychology of intelligence analysis. This was before they really started pushing structured analytic techniques. That's what got me into the analysis side, was working the back end of human.
The back end of human intelligence. What does human intelligence actually mean?
Human intelligence is any intelligence that comes from a human being. So it could be documents, it could be interrogations, it could be cooperative interviews, it could be running source operations, anything that comes from humans. And
that's like being a PI for
kind of.
Yeah.
Lots of different aspects to human.
It's probably the closest. When you see, again, like even old school cartoons, Secret Squirrel,
and
whatnot, like, or
the Spy versus Spy. Everyone has this image of human being, you're meeting in a dark restaurant with your source and they're going to pass you some documents. Most of the time, it's not. It's interviews, it's prisoner interrogation reports, all that. But there are some where you're liaising with communities or working with other intelligence agencies and using their sources, things like that. But a lot of the back-end job is working the sources, where you're analyzing, hey, is this source accurate? Is this source reliable? Which involves a lot of analysis. You have to know the subject matter, you have to know the area, you've got to work. So there's a lot that goes into that back end of it.
The psychology, the sociology, the anthropology, and then knowing
and you're trying to figure out their agenda and giving you this information, because every single source in the world has an agenda.
Are you leaning at all on any kind of gut instinct or following hunches, or is that something to be avoided?
When you're the collector, actually your instincts can be pretty good. They can be very helpful. You're out there putting your life on the line. So if you get into like Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear, your instincts are very, very well trained on spotting danger. Your instincts are extremely good at the snap judgments. They're really good at identifying liars, things like that. What they're not good at is the more slow, more methodical look at stuff. And that's where I had to come in as the analyst on the back end, where I couldn't let my intuition get into it. I had to say, okay, we need to verify everything verifiable from this guy. We need to see where he's actually good, where this person's not so good, to help our collectors get the most out of their sources, right? So that's the slower, much more methodical look at all this.
One thing we'll get to kind of like other applications, but when I came across like psychology intelligence analysis, my name was more around this sales psychology, sales strategy, and then quote sales enablement. And when I saw that, I'm like, why? Which again, with sales enablement, you are helping all your SDRs, so your sales development reps or your closers, and you're trying to help them while they're on the ground and kind of using a little bit more of their gut. It just blew my mind where I was like, why aren't those two communities kind of like
And I question with like lawyers, when you're a courtroom lawyer, an analyst on the back end working the argument mapping to help structure an argument, the holes, identify the gaps, identify where we made assumptions, things like that, or investigations. We can really help investigations. And the whole law enforcement aid to investigations is, I can't say it's new, but it's been slowly developing.
Yeah, like the closest you'll see, like NYPD has always been a little bit ahead because they had like a good budget.
They've got their intelligence-led policing. Jerry Ratcliffe has a really good, He went from the 3I model to the 4I model, and I think he's going back to the 3I model sometime soon.
Gotcha.
What are those? 3I and 4I?
Expressing your intent and informing, and it's how the analyst and the decision maker will interact around an investigation, around law enforcement, and how to create a safe and secure space, right? So reducing crime.
What do those stand for? 3I?
It is influencing the decision maker, expressing their intent, them investigating the crime environment, and then the analyst or the crime analysis influencing the decision maker into having an impact.
Has that the 4th-I impact?
Yeah. I'd have to refer back to the manual on this one. I've always been defense. I'm just kind of learning the law enforcement side right now. Intel is getting more and more interesting to me. The thing is, I like to be the junior dude in the room. I like to be the one learning stuff.
I try to be the dumbest person in the room all the time. That's been
Ideally
successful. Teaming with success.
Yeah. So I'm
like beginner's mindset.
Yeah, I love that.
Correct. Yeah.
So I've been spending a lot more time recently with the law enforcement side of the house, making a lot of friends there and seeing what I can learn from them. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be speaking at a conference coming up at the end of this month, Brunel University for law enforcement intel.
This episode should be out early enough that we'll make sure to shout that out.
That'd be great.
So back to the origin story.
So the time in Kosovo really started me off with the analysis side of the house rather than the collection side of the house. And I discovered that that's where my real passion was. I loved looking at the information. I loved putting pieces together. I loved being able to take a look at the entire picture and flesh things out and figure it out. Saw it as giant jigsaw puzzles with pieces that are constantly shifting. For me, it was a lot of fun getting into the analysis side. I loved it. And so that led me into my post-military career. I left the Army. You're going to laugh at this one. My official ending time in service, my ETS, was August 17th, 2001.
Whoa. So for the kids out there, 9/11 was the next month.
Less than a month.
You had a month to breathe.
I was an Arabic translator with the TS clearance, yada, yada, yada.
Wow.
Come on down.
Well, my first job.
Just like, is it Godfather? Let him out. They pulled me right back
I thought
in.
they were going to, but they never did. I have no idea why, but my first job coming out of the military was here in the UK at the European Command Analytics Center, then called the Joint Analysis Center.
Gotcha.
First, oh my God, it was a serious eye-opener for analysis. I was doing a real intel mission. I was doing the real analysis every single day. Mm-hmm. And I told myself, all right, I can go back in service and I'll probably end up being some guy with a shiny chicken or a shiny star on his collar as driver. And I'll probably be the first one into the sandbox and the last one out. Or I can stay where I am and I can continue doing the real intel mission until they call me back. So I stayed where I was on mission, and they never called me back. Hey, go ahead.
You had when you said, oh my God, it was really eye-opening. What was going on in your brain when you said that? What made it so eye-opening?
Right. So I'd done tactical intelligence, and I'd never been around the civilian analysts. We had a couple of civilian analysts with us down in Kosovo, but mostly it was military tactical intelligence on rotation doing the job. And the rest of the time when we're not on rotation doing the job, we're doing everything else that the Army does. Vehicle maintenance, regular training, shooting, all the other stuff. I got to the Joint Analysis Center here in the UK, and these were day in, day out professional analysts. Right? Nothing that I had done in the Army prepared me for being part of this world. They were wicked smart. Mm-hmm. They were amazing at putting pieces of information together. They had deep, deep expertise in their subject matters. They were amazing writers. They were amazing briefers. These were like top-notch analysts, and I felt like I totally did not belong here, but I wanted to. So I spent
Hmm.
months and months beating my head against the wall trying to be like these guys. And
Cue the training
exactly.
montage.
But I had no idea what the hell I was doing. Remember, I was trained as a collector and an Arabic translator, not for being
Yeah.
an intel analyst for the European Command's commander, who was dual-headed as the Supreme Allied Commander for NATO. I felt out of my depth, but damn it, I was going to try. Trying, failing, adjusting, trying, failing, adjusting, trying, failing, adjusting. And finally, when it just clicked.
Mm-hmm.
Figured out what they wanted me to do, figured out how they wanted me to write, figured out how to be a member of that analytic team.
If you were to describe or give advice to somebody who's going through that trying, failing, or curious about entering that world, what would be your biggest piece of advice to get to that breakthrough?
Find a mentor. Making that change is incredibly difficult on your own. Find one that can teach you the differences between what you know and what you need to know.
Mm. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Sean introduced me to this term SATs, and I got horror flashbacks to high school.
No.
The strategic analytic techniques.
Structured analytic techniques, yes.
Structured.
Yep.
Thank you. Structured. But how would you just, like, what's a basic tool or something you might first learn? What does it look like in practice?
The most basic ones are like matrices and timelines and things like that. It's putting together a matrix so you can compare information side by side. Does that make sense?
Would you be looking at, is it like, because I'm thinking now about human intelligence and how, things that they said side by side, how much of it is,
like images,
could be satellite, could be anything. And just looking at the whole of the information and comparing it to what you know, or you can use matrices for assessing source credibility. Like the Army has a method of assessing reports, which has the source credibility next to the information credibility or information reliability, with an A through F for the source and a 1 through 6 for the information. And how you put those together expresses how reliable this information and this report is. So an A source is one that is always reliable. A B source is one that is usually reliable, down to an E source, which is one that is usually unreliable. And then an F is we have no honking clue. This guy is too new or whatever it is. And then the same with the information, where a 1 is confirmed information, down to a 5, which is probably false information. And then 6 is your guess is as good as mine. Got nothing.
One thing I kind of wanted to take a step back in terms of, and then please, whatever I say is wrong, just correct me. But it's almost like, why do we have intelligence analysis methodology? Why did Richard Hoyer think in terms of structured analytic techniques?
For logic.
And this is a time where, again, like Dick Hoyer, again, like God rest his soul, that's when like cognitive psychology, like 1.0, we're talking like the Kahneman, Tversky, like their first papers come in. All those kind of papers were high side, which is classified, high side, which, after Signal Gate, this already knows what a skiff is. But in terms of...
We don't.
All right.
And wait, the name, and then you said high side and skiff.
I'll explain Richard Hoyer in terms of like the author of Psychology and Intelligence Analysis. But when we say high side, that would just mean like classified kind of networks and whatnot. So I just mentioned that because, like on Signal Gate, they were talking about like, that was probably high side information. Or things in terms of a skiff, which is like a secured kind of facility where you can talk about these classified secret squirrel sort of things.
Which
that would not be Signal, to be doubly clear. But in terms of... This is something where, again, those first, cognitive psychology 1.0, they were looking at things like biases, or at that time, they were really, at least Kahneman and Tversky, they were challenging assumptions that you have in economics about like Homo economicus, or like this. When you average people together, they come out to the most rational decision. They're like, no, they don't. And here's how we can show you when they don't come to certain rational decisions. And Richard Hoyer, again, if you go with the legend, which, that's all I have to go on. He saw this work. he saw its relations to intelligence analysis, where these folks were just as smart, knew how to write just as good, and it was all based on, you know, kind of just going with that expertise and trusting it, and not necessarily having, you know, like thinking about things like maybe where the biases and whatnot.
Yep.
Richard Hoyer was the first one to try to externalize in terms of finding and possibly mitigating biases that would be in reports to help them be more objective.
Chronological
collection
fallacies,
of essays. Correct. And the collection of essays came out, like I said, in the 1999-2000 period, at least publicly, in that psychology of intelligence analysis, which again, it was eye-opening for me in terms of like, I felt like that was kind of the direction.
No, it was
where I was doing
really
data science
good.
work.
Another one in the same line, written by David T. Moore several years later. I think it was 2007, 2009, something like that. He wrote Sense Making. That one's available on the National Intelligence University website. Just you can Google Sense Making and David T. Moore and get the PDF book.
I love
yeah,
David Moore's
and he was.
work.
I got to meet David Moore and Steve Marin at the same time, and I had a little bit of hero worship on that.
Steve
yeah, I had a little hero worship nerd stuff.
Shout out to Steve
Yeah,
Marin.
brilliant guy.
He is, in terms of the academic study of intelligence analysis, I think he's treated as kind of like the luminary
in many ways. Yeah,
this wonderful connector of people.
So it's like if we had a
he should be there.
Rushmore, we'd have this guy and Richard.
Daniel Kahneman, talking sets.
Who do you think should be on the Mount Rushmore of intelligence analysis methodologists? And then we'll get.
Oh, you're gonna have to do.
5 will be mad.
Yeah. And you actually brought up a name that needs to go into this, because Richard Hoyer and his work and the whole thing around the SATs needs to be put against Daniel Kahneman with Thinking Fast and Slow. All right. So the intuition that we're always talking about, that's our system one. That's Gavin de Becker with The Gift of Fear. That is your instinctive together of information.
Fast.
It's incredibly fast. And it's incredibly cognitively easy. Your brain loves system one thinking. And about 98% of all the thinking that we do is that system one thinking. Right?
You know what else loves system one?
Biases.
Your social media. Yeah. That too. Your social media feed. The Doofs girl, that's
and
system one.
You better believe that the misinformation, disinformation coming out from everyone, our adversaries, is playing on just that. The system one thinking in our social media feeds.
100%.
And that's because it's satisfying. It's like candy.
They play us. They're giving us mind candy, and our brains are rotting.
Yeah.
They are. The SATs.
So SATs help us floss.
SATs help us floss. SATs.
What
I like
a
it.
phrase.
They are the effective brushing and flossing for our minds. It is taking that slower, more methodical, more logical look. It's forcing us into system two thinking. And that's where some of the criticisms of SATs have come in, where if you really step away from, it's a structured technique, and just apply logic, you know what? There's not going to be a whole lot of objective difference between slowing yourself down and using good logic. There's not a whole lot of output difference.
I think one analogy to go with in terms of like a good intel group would be like a sales team. The other one would be a high velocity newsroom where you get like a lot of these things are due yesterday, and these things can take time. And I think that's at least a lot of the excuse I heard kind of traditionally, like these things may be a little bit more time consuming.
Yep. Number one reason people don't use SATs is the time it takes.
Yeah.
Can you trust AI to help with this sort of slowing down?
That is what's on a lot of people's minds right now in the Intel community. Yes, we absolutely want AI to take over some of these functions, but you asked exactly the right question. Can we trust AI to do it? And it's a huge unknown.
And it kind of seems, while helpful, also perhaps harmful, because if we're not training ourselves to slow down and use that system to thinking, then we're just going to keep reverting back to the yummy candy.
So
rot.
ideally, and this is my own personal view on this one, I think we want to get AI to the point where we can turn over some of these tasks to that AI. because it would give us the benefit of some system 2 thinking without having to go through the time and effort of system 2 thinking, if we can trust the algorithm. And when it comes to cognitive biases, no, it doesn't do a damn thing for us and our biases. But it takes that away from us, so it's removing the biases because it's not letting us do it, if that makes any sense.
One thing I kind of wanted to shout out, because again, in terms of our show, we're aimed at folks in terms of like the hill cut to learn these things, but also everyday folks. This is actually an area where I'll throw industry as well, but probably everyday folks get help out. What do I mean by that? Because pre-ChatGPT, again, I remember even making a grant to, at least the thing you get, one of the more famous SATs is a analysis of competing hypotheses.
Well, can you say that again?
The analysis of competing
analysis
of competing hypotheses. You're looking at two what if questions side by side,
more asking
or proposed
and
ideas.
Your hypotheses.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you see, here's all my list of hypotheses. Here's all my list of evidence, and see how they match up.
Kind of.
So
you do generate multiple hypotheses. We want them to be what we call mutually exclusive and comprehensively exhaustive, which means if one hypothesis is correct, all of the other hypotheses must be incorrect. So mutually
So it should be strong.
Right.
Yeah.
And then comprehensively exhaustive, where the hypotheses you come up with have to cover every possible conclusion.
Is there an example? What would that look like in the real world?
Hypothesize, we're going to take a hypothetical cyber attack, right? Say that you just got hit with a cyber attack. Okay, it could be cyber criminals with state support. It could be cyber criminals without state support. It could be a state actor, not cyber criminals. Be an internal attack with state support. It could be an internal attack without state support, or it might be a mistake and not an attack at all. That's and then
you're looking at these side by side.
You match up all the evidence you've got, all the information you have, all the reporting you've got, everything you know about it, and you're looking for inconsistencies. Is the information from this report consistent or inconsistent or no effect on this hypothesis? Is it consistent, inconsistent, or no effect on this hypothesis? And ACH has the benefit of being one of the more scientific-y, method-y kind of SATs, where you're not looking for consistencies, you're looking to disconfirm. You're looking for the inconsistencies to reject hypotheses. And the last one standing is your most likely hypothesis.
Like, if folks listen to this again, I think they really appreciate that background. In terms of applying at least machine learning, it was just like a very basic kind of recommender system where you'd put in, say you put like a bunch of these hypotheses. Well, actually, more interesting one is you put in a bunch of the evidence that you have, and then it starts like recommending you like possible hypotheses to consider. And then the other aspect would be, if you put in hypotheses, it would be like, wait, is there this evidence here, things to kind of look for? And this is getting all back to why I think in terms of like everyday folks and probably industry could be helpful versus during that time, a lot of the feedback that I got, which is a lot of things even like pre-Chat GPT, was for analysts to use these things, they need to know exactly how the data started out, all the processing, and how it got to that point. It needed to be as transparent and clear as possible. There couldn't be a black box in of that, which for a lot of AI companies, this wasn't me in terms of what I was doing, but a lot of AI companies are like, T, that's our secret sauce. We can't tell you. Like, okay, like, thanks, like, have a nice day. So, because there can't be a black box in terms of explaining how you got those results. That's why there's a lot of push before on quote unquote explainable AI. Chat GPT was just, it's toothpaste out the tube, genie out the bottle, whatever kind of analogy you want, where it was just out there and everybody was using it. And so there's this kind of precarious space where that explainability is still very much needed, I think, on the government side to use these sort of things, but they know if they're not using them, they're playing catch up.
Absolutely. And that's
the kind of quandary on the government end, and that's why I think everyday folks
right.
in
We
industry
we have to start using AI, because if we don't, all of our competitors are going to outstrip us by far. So we have to have humans involved, because if the scatological matter hits the rotating blades and things go wrong, someone's going to go down for it. And that investigation is not going to accept something like, well, the computer told me.
We interrupt this episode to say, if you've ever felt really alone and didn't know where to turn, may we suggest, put the picture over here, Elle Yonker. Elle is what national security should look like. She protects people online as a cybersecurity expert, but she also shows up for people in crisis through the Hive Social Garden, which helps folks find real support when things get hard. Her website, thehivesocial.garden. She's our first recurring sponsor. Thank you eternally for that, which feels exactly right. Elle, this is for you and for everybody listening. Please go to her website, thehivesocial.garden. Feel free to bother her on LinkedIn. She'll probably appreciate it. Now, back to the show.
So
yeah, it's like seeing when you can see AI do the reasoning. That's like one example.
Yeah, and as it gets better at the reasoning, as it gets better at this kind of stuff, then we might start to see it in the Intel world. Absolutely. And it will do a lot of benefit. It will take a lot of the foundational load off of our analysts, where if it can just be answered by research, let AI do it. Don't have an analyst do it. Have the analyst doing stuff that the algorithms can't do, or with the abductive logic stuff, the putting evidence together for the best explanation.
Or the storytelling.
The hard thing, well, yes.
Although I'm going to be honest with you, and after having read the outputs from AIs, from ChatGPT, things like that, it writes better than many analysts that I've ever encountered. Yeah,
I think the AI writes better than most people.
Yeah,
Carolina Reaper.
That's the thing is, we're human. You get the long-term professionals, and they know what the heck they're doing. But you get a junior analyst, and they're coming out of high school, and they've been chatting their whole life. It runs the gamut.
I feel like there's a disconnect also between how people are taught to communicate through story on the page in writing, and this academic expectation of it being obtuse and obfuscated and not in everyday plain language that translates into government and industry, where there's like so much, leveraging innovation to maximize efficiencies. It's like, what? Yeah. You just want to save money by making better tools? Why don't you just say that?
I've been teaching Intel writing for ages. And Intel writing and academic writing are exactly the same. So where your academic writing was designed to show off your knowledge, right? Because you're in this academic environment to get a grade. And you get a grade by showing off how much you know. And you show off how much you know by writing it all, by packing everything you know into this research paper, right? Gotcha. Most of what we're trying to do is pack that research paper full of everything, because, we're trying to get that A, or in my case, trying to get that C. Right? A's may pay, but C's get degrees, all right? But Intel writing, here's the thing. And this goes into, Frank Watanabe. He wrote the 15 axioms for intelligence analysis, or intelligence analysts. Ooh, okay. You can Google 15 axioms for intelligence analysts, and it is a fantastic. It was what he wrote to his team as he was going to go off and teach at the Sherman Kent Center, which is CIA's Intel school. The consumer does not care how much you know. Just tell them what's important. All right.
Make me care. Number one story commandment also.
And it gets into your audience. When you're in school, when you're writing all your academic stuff, you have a captive audience. Your professor is paid to read your stuff. That's their job, is to read your stuff. In the real world, they have their own jobs to do. And they only read your stuff because they believe it's going to help them do their actual job. We're writing for the only audience in the world that actively does not want to read our stuff. They read it because they think
Poor
that they're going to
intel
get
analysts.
benefit. We've got to minimize that bulk. We've got to minimize what we're saying to just what they need. Give it to them in the fastest, easiest, most easily digestible way possible. Yeah, our school, it's exactly the same as Intel writing, but inverted. So school, you build up to a grand conclusion. Intel, you start with your bluff, that bottom line up front. Everything anchors on that bluff. So if your audience gets called away with an emergency hangnail, or they only want to bother reading the first paragraph, they still get what they need to go out there and make a decision.
Going back a little bit, AI, it's good at kind of like spitting out everything no, but again, get into even your work as an intelligence analysis methodology. I challenge in terms of it being able to spit out what it doesn't know.
It might help us with that, actually, because we're pretty bad at that too. Yeah, I mean, filled with confirmation bias whenever we do our own research. Confirmation bias
certainly
is when you're looking for things that match what you already believe, right?
IamRight.com, as Bill Burr put it.
Yes. We all fall prey to that, analysts included. And one of the things that we try to do, that we kind of train to do, is to step back from what our opinions are, what we already believe when we're doing our research, and look for evidence that contradicts what we believe, or look for evidence that's more holistic than our pet projects or our pet philosophies or our pet preconceptions. So, we'll ask a question and then deconstruct a question into our own personal information requirements, where I need to know these things to be able to answer that question. So here, I'm going to go look for these things rather than just trying to find an answer or information that would support what I already believe about the answer. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And AI can really help with this, where AI, since it is generally more unbiased than us, if you train it with an objective data set, then it should not fall prey to the same confirmation biases that we do.
And even asking it, what aren't we noticing? What is the information we don't know yet? What are the assumptions we might be making?
Look up the Reason. It's spelled Reason, REASON project, where they put out the tender on just the Googles, but it's looking for exactly that. It's looking for an AI assistant. It's an AI assistant to an analyst to make sure that they are considering all the information out there, which I think is pretty cool.
If it just helps you find things that you weren't kind of thinking of to begin with.
It's like the strategy work, and when you're interviewing, like the human intelligence from that side too, is just imagining, marketing and sales teams, how they go and they're interviewing people and trying to get a best gauge of their behaviors and likes and dislike preferences to understand how they're going to behave in the world based on the thing that you're trying to get them to buy. Right?
Absolutely. It's line the business world, the intel world, the law enforcement world, they're blurry between them. Mm-hmm. So what applies to one could very easily apply to the others. SWAT's a perfect example, where you're right, Sean, it was developed for the business world, but it has great application in intelligence. The things that is easiest and most widespread across the military are those, they're called by different names. I like to call them domains analysis. The Brits called it environment scanning. It can be called outside-in thinking.
Okay.
You mentioned DIME, the Diplomatic, Information, Military, and Economic. It's an acronym. It stands for different domains that you're analyzing. There's PMISI, the Political, Economic, Military, Information, and Infrastructure. Then you can bring the stemples in, which has the social, the military, the economic, etc., the military, political, and this one includes the legal. Lots and lots of different acronyms out there. I like to call them domains analysis because you're looking at all the different domains when you're looking at it, or when you're performing this analysis. All just ways to clarify and structure your own thinking. Often they're idea generation techniques to make sure that you're not forgetting about things. And they're some of the easiest things that you can teach an analyst. You can teach them an acronym and a way to look at things. I mean, having been in the Army, the salute report, size, activity, location, uniforms, time, and equipment was taught to us.
Oh, our brains love those acronyms.
They do. And that's why they work so well. The more acronyms you can learn, the better off you're going to be.
It's funny that we use the acronyms, which is System 1 Delight, in order to behave in System 2 ways.
Absolutely.
Way to bring that
That's
back.
the most delightful one. This one came out of Chico State, or California State University, Chico, them. It's for source. It's my favorite source evaluation model. And it's called the CRAAP test. CRAAP, Currency, Relevance, Authority, Accuracy, and Purpose. The acronym, it's a cool mnemonic. Hey, have you done a crap test on your sources? And you can say, yeah, this source is full of crap.
Wait, is being full of crap a good thing for this purpose?
Well, it can be. But the more fun it is, the more you're going to remember it. The more likely it is you're going to use it.
That's Jocelyn's.
Easy and enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Yes.
When it's tedious and boring and miserable, guess what? No one's going to do it. And when we're dealing with SATs, you have to make it so you can incorporate it into your normal daily stuff, or make it kind of fun, or somehow make it not as onerous as it looks on paper. You know, if we can gamify critical thinking, if we can gamify structured techniques, if we can gamify that hard look at the information and at ourselves and the logic that we're using, I think it would have a lot better success in the outside world. If it's not fun, no one's going to do it.
Fun makes life better, everybody.
It does. It does.
It makes us kinder, smarter, happier people.
If you're not having fun, then what are we doing here?
You got to have the upsides for all of the other real hard things we go through.
When we are struggling with decision, struggling with trust, trying to figure something out, we start performing research to try and understand everything there is to know about that, whatever it is we're looking at. And with the bulk of information out there, we get caught up in an endless research loop where the research never ends. And there's always more information. And then the information conflicts and the information isn't consistent. And instead of decreasing the uncertainties that we have, it increases the uncertainties that we have. So we try to research more, and we get more information that conflicts. And we get more information that decreases our certainty. You've got to put an end to it. You have to say, okay, I have enough information at this point to take that step back and look at what I've got and figure out what I'm looking at. Otherwise, how do you do that?
Yeah.
It takes a...
How do you get to that point?
Intel, like, okay, it's due in 12 hours. You better
and that's
get
why,
it done.
Product, when you have a decision to make, or when you have, whatever it is you're looking at, backward plan it. When does this decision need to be made? When does this product need to be out of the door? When does this need to be done? All right, how much time do I think I'll need to actually look at the information and make a decision on it? All right, that leaves me how much time to actually do the research. And that takes a lot of self-discipline to stick to those time limits that you set for yourself. Because it is so easy to get caught up in that endless research loop where you just keep finding more and more information. And more information is not always good. And you're getting decreasing signal and increasing noise.
You're trying to find the most salient information.
Right.
And even the psychology and intelligence analysis, I forgot. I think it was like betting on horse racing or something like that. But the more information that was introduced, it got to a point where it kind of capped off what the accuracy was. But in terms of confidence, the more information I get, I feel even more confident. But not necessarily leading to kind of better results.
Yeah.
Worse.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, absolutely. And you can, some of the cognitive tests out there, I can't remember who it was that ran the test, but that overconfidence, underconfidence test, where our confidence in difficult problems, we tend to be overconfident with difficult problems and underconfident with simple problems. But
this is why it's so hard to decide what to have for dinner.
Sometimes, yeah. But our confidence rarely matches our ability. So we're trying to, and this goes kind of against the Intel community where we're looking at analytic confidence a lot. You need to look at your confidence first and then look at your methodology to see how actually confident you can be in that answer you came up with.
That's great.
Is there an SAT for your own confidence?
An SAT, not that I've seen, but most of the Intel communities out there or the organizations out there do have an analytic confidence chart. So DIA's got a chart, CIA's got a chart, GCHQ has a chart. I've got like 7 or 8 charts offhand that I just pulled off. You can find them on the internet, what charts. Yeah. And no, it just goes into what your information base is, how much potential there is for deception, what kind of assumptions you're making in there, and how critical those assumptions are to the answers. So yeah, gauging your confidence is, I think, a lot easier at the tail end of all this, where you've done the analysis, you have your information base, you've identified your assumptions and the alternatives and the potential for deception and all the other stuff that you need to identify, and then you can look at it holistically. But trying to just go into a decision with confidence gives you the wrong decisions because your confidence and your abilities rarely match up.
We see a lot of that kind of like super forecaster work in terms of like forecasting, and then looking back in terms of your confidence. And again, like the more you kind of like train it, kind of.
For those that don't know Tetlock, the super forecasting stuff, he was looking at, he called them foxes and hedgehogs, where he made it fun. Where a fox is kind of a master of many disciplines, or a practitioner of many disciplines. Am I correct on this one, Sean?
Yeah. Correct. So they kind of have more broad.
Right. So not the hedgehogs are deep into one subject, but they're not very good. They don't have much breadth. Where the foxes have a lot of breadth, but not much depth. And he did a long-term study of professional forecasters, people who made their living off of making predictions. And he was judging their accuracy. The hedgehogs, the ones that had the deep expertise in one subject but not much breadth, he said that they were actually slightly less accurate than what he called dart-throwing chimps, which was just random chance, because they tended to miss all of the factors and drivers that play into a problem. Where those with breadth of experience and breadth of knowledge tended to be a little bit better at forecasting because they did look at the drivers and the influences on problems.
You work with business folks too now,
yes.
Right?
Some.
Do you think that's one of the biggest points of struggle for folks? And I know that some of the executives I work with get frustrated that their teams aren't making fast enough decisions because they don't feel like they know when to make a call, or they don't feel confident in making a decision. What's your advice to them?
My advice? So if the team is tasked with generating an assessment to make a decision, first, they need to go into it with a really solid question. What's the question that we're trying to answer to give us the assessment we need to make a decision? So first, learn how to ask a really honking good question. And that's something that we're not taught to do in school. We're taught how to answer other people, not taught how to ask them. Yeah. And it's not a natural skill. We tend to ask really stupid questions. So first, learn how to ask a really good question. Then second, learn how to break that question down into its component parts to tailor your research and make your research more valuable. There are several different ways to do it. Probably the easiest way to do it would be to throw through one of those domain acronyms. So whether it's DIME, the diplomatic, information, military, economic, but there's lots out there depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And the more of those acronyms you have access to, like I've got a folder on my computer with probably a dozen different acronyms, just like little explainer graphics, things like that, because I can't remember them all either.
Rosetta Stone.
But I know that they're useful. So I have them in there, and if I have a problem, I'll just start flipping through them saying, yep, that one, that's the one that's going to help me most in this situation. And break it down, go through each of those domains saying, okay, what do I need to know about my problem in this domain? What do I need to know about my problem in this domain? And really give yourself hard targets on what you need to learn to answer your question. Once you can answer that question, then you can generate your conclusion. Once you have your conclusion, you can make a decision.
So can we learn how to ask good questions?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
How do you learn that, and how do you recognize when you are asking a good question?
The recognition part,
which I think is a good question.
It is. And I don't actually have a good answer. I've never had anyone ask me how to recognize when you ask a good question. Tough one.
Same here.
Just no question is ever the perfect question. It's just the best you can ask in the time that you've got. And you've gone through it to identify whatever assumptions you're making in it, to identify whatever biases you're putting into it, to make sure that you're asking the right one. There are several techniques to go in there and take a question and make it better. But how to recognize when you have a good question, that's a tough one. At some point, you just have to say, all right, well, answering this question, give me what I need to make my decision. Your business guys, that they have teams that are struggling to come up with analysis. Start off with a relatively simple question. The one that I would start with when I was doing Intel analysis is, how will X development, whatever this development is that I'm looking at, how will X development impact my client's ability to do their job? Start with that. That's your baseline. And then you say, okay, well, what about this development is going to impact what aspect of their job? And you can narrow down, and then you can really refine that question. But you've given yourself a starting point, and one that hopefully helps to ensure relevance.
If you have, I know you just gave me a really great example, but if people listening to this just go away and they could practice one thing pretty immediately, let's say they're about to get on social media, for example, what's one fun and easy thing they might try to practice these? CRAAP test.
Absolutely. It stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So starting off with currency, is the information that I'm looking at current, or is it older information? If it is older or dated information, is it still valid? What makes me believe that it's still valid? Do I need to have more current information, or will this do for my purposes? We see lots of things on the internet that actually, they came out 5 years ago. They're outdated, but they're put out like they're modern. So first thing you need to do, take a look. How current is this thing? The relevance. Does it actually impact what I'm looking at, or is it just inflammatory? Is it actually relevant or just related? Is it relevant or is it just interesting? And there's a big difference. Getting into the authority. Is the provider of information here an authority on this subject? Just because they're an authority on one subject doesn't mean they're an authority on this subject. This is how we get, celebrity endorsements on whatever it happens to be. We see them as an authority because they're a celebrity, but they're talking about something they really have no expertise in. But then you're also getting into, would this person naturally have access to this? So, and this is the Intel world. Would whoever provided this information naturally have access to that information? But you can take it out into anything. So when you're doing your own research, when you're looking at a piece of information, don't look at the outlet that carried it. The outlets will have their own slants, absolutely. Every single media outlet has a slant. Who are they citing as the provider of this information? Get as close as you can to that ultimate source. Would that ultimate source naturally have access to this information? And would they be providing this information? And I'm going to skip over the accuracy real quick because that gets into purpose. I'll come back to the accuracy. Don't let me forget about that. Every single provider of information in the world, every one of them, has a reason they are providing information. Often that reason has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with deception. But they all have a reason. If you want to know how accurate this information is, you have to know why they're providing it. What are they trying to accomplish by providing this information? Are they trying to make the world a better place? Are they trying to push an agenda? Are they trying to protect a policy? What are they trying to do by providing this information? That gets back into your accuracy. Does this piece of information fit with other information out there? Or does it fit with my biases? Does it fit with my preconceptions? Do I want it to be accurate, or is it empirically accurate? If it, and that's getting into inside of this article, piece of information, whatever it is, what inside of this can be verified? What can be examined to see if it is true or not true, fact or not fact? Examine it. Does it hold up? But then I'm going to be honest with you. You have to agree on what facts are before you can do this. I mean, that's the beginning of approaching social media. Being able to weed through the crap using the CRAAP test will help you. SATs, there's lots of manuals, lots of guides out there. I mean, for my research and my classes and things like that, I go through 7 different manuals that all have different SATs in them, and where they overlap on SATs, they all do them slightly differently. There is no one authoritative manual. The closest one you're going to get to an authoritative manual is the Structured Analytic Techniques manual from the Pearson Associates. It's also like $100, and it's the best one out there. It is the most comprehensive one out there, but it's $100. Pearson Associates. You can get it on Amazon. It's there. Structured Analytic Techniques. But there are several free ones out there. Probably the best free one that I've seen on the internet is from the U.S. military or Army Training Command, a Training and Doctrine Command, and their Red Team Handbook from U.S. TRADOC. A good one. It's as comprehensive as you're going to get in a free, openly available manual. Also, you can look up NATO Alt-A. It's the NATO Alternative Analysis Handbook. Another one that I would pull up is the United Kingdom's Quick Wins for Busy Analysts. It's the basis of their Defense Intelligence Analytic Methodology class. Those 4 are really good ones, and they're free, which I think is a bonus.
I have 2 more questions. One, the question that I'm going to borrow from the question you gave us earlier, that to help out the business people. Let's see if I can do this right. Let's see it. What impact would more people using these techniques in everyday life have on our society?
More people using structured techniques, which improves our cognition, reduces our logical fallacy. What impact would it have? I think it would decrease a lot of our internal conflict, our polarized rivalries, because we would be taking that slower, more deliberate look. We would have to once again reach some sort of consensus on fact. We'd have to reach some sort of consensus on valid information. And the beauty of those structured techniques is they are replicable. So someone going through the same technique with the same information should come up with a similar result. So if you are using these things and you're openly using them and open with your methodology on them, someone can point out that you're missing information and that you need to add that information into your matrix. Or we can evaluate each other's logic more easily and say, all right, I see where you got this, but we missed this. And it would increase our ability to engage in constructive dialogue.
No big deal, kids.
Well,
have healthier conversations.
Wrapping your own sense of identity around the information that you believe, it externalizes the information. It makes it something that you can talk about because it is not wrapped around your own identity.
Right. It takes away any issues of shame, too. So if people are afraid that they're wrong or they're stupid, it's just like, no, this is how brains work. This is how minds work. And
if you've seen Crash Course Philosophy, John's brother, I can't remember his name offhand. He does a Crash Course Philosophy thing. All the videos out there on logic. So, an introduction to logic and deductive logic and inductive logic and abductive logic. He's talking about argument. And the thing is, argument from a philosophical perspective is incredibly good because a philosophical argument is trying to get closer to truth. The trouble is, when we argue, we don't argue philosophically. And using a structured technique and externalize that information and putting it down in a format that we can collaborate on can help turn our interpersonal arguments into more philosophical arguments, where we are collaborating on trying to reach a greater truth rather than trying to be right.
I want to see a philosophical presidential debate.
You're going there for this capstone.
Anything else you want to plug?
To you to expand that benefit to others, even beyond the show.
The one coming up at the end, I'm looking forward to that. It's my first real foray into the law enforcement side of things. So I'm going to be talking about analytic questions in intelligence-led policing at Brunel University. So I don't have the expertise in law enforcement intel per se, but I am pretty good with questions. So that's where I'm coming in with the expertise on that one. But the one I'm really looking forward to is going to be in September. That one is going to be in Madrid, and it's the International Association for Intelligence Education. And that is a conference full of intel nerds all getting together to look at how we can do the intel job better from both an academic perspective and a training perspective. Because I am very much a trainer. I'm not an educator. I do some education as far as it enables you to actually have an output at the end. Yep. Much more of a trainer. But I love collaborating with the educators. We're going to be looking at the competencies of the future for intel analysis. That's what the whole conference is going to be centered around this year. Fun.
Juicy. Head to September event and the end of April event. Everyone, listeners out here, and any other projects, books, or resources of yours you'd like to share, and how people can best find you.
I have a few things in the works, but nothing I really want to talk about quite yet. We'll come back to this one. I'm not ready to put a time on it. Understood. But no, absolutely would love to work with anyone. And if you wanted to find any of the manuals that I mentioned, but you have trouble finding them on the internet, just send me an email. It's jlevin@questimation.com. Quest, like an epic quest, and then questimation like estimation. So it's quest for estimation.
We'll make sure to link it.
Absolutely. Just send me an email if you can't find one of these things, and I'll see if I can find it for you. If you have a question, I'm always open to questions, and I'd love to work with you. I care more about people thinking better, making better decisions, because when people can think better and talk better and work better together, and the decisions that are coming out of all of that is better, it's a world that I want to live in a little bit more. So, yeah.
I've come to talk with you again. Come and be inside my head. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel gonna say. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel gonna say. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel gonna say. Cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me.